What's going on, everybody? Kevin Cage here with another crypto update. Welcome back to part 2 of this breakdown to go over Ripple's massive institutional DeFi updates. So my voice is absolutely gone, so if it sounds like I can't talk, now you know why. But anyways, if you missed part 1, we went through how the XRP ledger has already gone live with several features. And these include credentials, deep freeze, and simulate, and these tools give institutions the confidence to begin building on-chain. So today we're going to dive into the rest of this monster blog. Alright, so let's dive in. So first up, for the XRP Ledger feature release overview, we had this published back in June, the XRPL version 2.50. And this introduced a lot of major upgrades, including batch transactions, permission DEX, permission delegation, token escrow, and new upgrades to the AMM. Alright, and the big highlight right here is token escrow, as it extends the XRP Ledger's long-standing escrow primitive to cover all tokenized assets, including stablecoins and MPTs. This unlocks conditional settlement for regulated assets with new options for cancellation, clawback, and compliance controls. So the big thing about this token escrow, the XRP Ledger has always had escrow for XRP, but now this covers all tokenized assets. So think of this token escrow basically like a digital lockbox. You can put any asset in there, you can set conditions, and it only unlocks if the rules are met. So for regulated markets, this means that stablecoins, tokenized bonds, all of these things can be locked, canceled, and then even clawed back if needed. And that's really important because this is compliance-grade settlements that's built right into the protocol. Alright, we just had this released in August, XRPL version 2.60, so what they did in this release was added more tools for developers like better visibility into MPTs, these multi-purpose tokens, along with richer transaction data. So the speed of these releases is happening faster, and this is just emphasizing that the XRP Ledger is maturing as a platform. And I love what Ripple says right here. For institutions, regulatory compliance is not an optional layer, it is the gateway to adoption. So without regulatory compliance, institutions are not going to touch blockchain, so it's mandatory. And that's why we have down below the XRP Ledger's identity stack has been designed to meet these expectations while preserving decentralization. Alright, so we're already familiar with DIDs, decentralized identifiers. Think of these like digital passports. They let users or companies prove who they are without a central authority holding all the data. And then after DIDs, we have credentials, so these are tied to those IDs. So think of these like your stamp of approval. They prove KYC for Know Your Customer or accreditation to confirm if you are an accredited investor or maybe even a qualified buyer. So it's like a driver's license that confirms that you're cleared for certain activities. And underneath that, we have permission domains. So permission domains, these are basically gated areas where only approved participants can enter. So picture it like a members-only trading floor. Undergoing voting allow markets to gate participation based on these credentials, creating user-controlled environments. And last but not least, we have a permission DEX, DEX, standing for Decentralized Exchange. So the XRPL has already had a DEX, but what this does is it extends the existing DEX into fully regulated markets with Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering controls. And what this does is enable secondary markets for real-world assets or foreign exchange. And just like they say in this blog, all of these features together are a big deal because these create a modular compliance stack. Alright, next up, let's dive into this. Tokenization and MPT. MPT is a token standard on the XRP Ledger and it stands for Multi-Purpose Token, and this is expected to go live in October. And this is the language of real assets. The XRP Ledger was built for tokenization. Now we know that the XRP Ledger has focused on payments for years, but as we can see, they are really getting into compliance, custody, and they also understand that tokenization is really a huge foundation of their institutional strategy. So think of these MPTs like flexible tokens that can carry very important details. So an example would be being able to embed directly into the metadata, maturity dates, and restrictions if we're discussing a bond. So instead of complex smart contracts, this information is baked right into the token itself. So imagine buying a bond where all the terms are written on the token and the token enforces them automatically. I highly recommend checking out this video where they say right here, for builders, MPTs mean less storage and more efficient code. And the next phase will allow for the integration of MPTs directly into the DEX, enabling seamless trading, AMM liquidity pools, and cross-token payments. So this closes the entire loop, from issuance to trading to settlement, entirely at the protocol level. So issuance, trading, settlements, this happens right on the XRP ledger, and this is a complete financial workflow that is natively on-chain. So discussing tokenization and traditional markets, what could be an MPT or multi-purpose token? What could be represented? Absolutely anything. From bonds to money market funds to stable coins to tokenized repo agreements, tokenized shares of funds and ETFs, real world assets and real estate, carbon credits, invoices, literally anything. I mean, airline miles, even licensing or IP backed tokens, royalty and revenue share tokens, anything. So when you think of MPTs, just think of one word, flexible, because they can carry metadata that you directly embed into the token without needing super complex smart contracts. It's more efficient, it's less code, and it's ideal for anything that has a time component, whether it has a maturity date or a vesting schedule or lockup. Or maybe it needs compliance metadata for KYC approval, credentials, or based on where you are in the world, like jurisdiction-specific rules. So it's a big deal. All right, next up, we have credit on chain, the native lending protocol. So this might be the biggest deal or the biggest milestone that's coming to the XRP ledger, and this is at the launch with version 3.00 later this year. And this protocol is built or based on the XLS 65 and XLS 66 standards or specifications. So we have these single asset vaults. So basically think that everybody is pulling their money together in these vaults, and it's almost like a neighborhood credit union. So lenders put funds in, and then they get their shares back. These are transferable or tradable, and these vaults can either be open to everybody, or they could be restricted to verified institutions. So we can see these vaults can be public or gated via permission domains, which we went over. Now on top of those single asset vaults, we have the lending protocol XLS 66 then builds on these vaults to enable fixed term uncollateralized loans with preset amortization schedules. So basically this protocol creates loans with clear repayment schedules. So everything, issuing the loan, tracking payments, and setting it up runs directly on the XRP ledger. While the other stuff like underwriting and risk management, that remains off-chain where institutions already have mature models. Alright, so we finally have a native lending protocol coming to the XRP ledger. And how is this different from other lending protocols on other blockchains? So on Ethereum, we have Aave or Compound. If you borrow $100, you might have to lock up maybe $150 first. It's decentralized and it's kind of like going to a pawn shop. It can be safe, but it's not practical for most borrowers. We have a bunch of lending apps on Solana. They can run super fast, but they're still siloed in smart contracts. What the XRP ledger is doing is flipping the model, so it's more like real-world banking, so loans can be underwritten without massive collateral, and there's even an option for first loss buffer. So this is basically insurance that protects the lender if something goes wrong, and if collateral is needed, it's handled through trusted custodians, not random wallets. So for institutions and institutional use cases, the appeal is clear. No financial institution will turn down low-cost capital if it can be sourced within KYC AML standards. So why is this a big deal? Because borrowers can get cheaper capital, lenders finally can earn yield on idle assets, and institutions can get compliance, transparency, and low fees all in one system. And operationally, the protocol automates the entire loan lifecycle, issuance, repayment tracking, and reconciliation directly on the ledger, reducing back-office overhead and cutting reliance on intermediaries and all these middlemen and providing a tamper-proof audit trail that is a huge benefit of blockchain. So bottom line, the XRP Ledger's lending protocol is taking what works in traditional credit markets and delivering it with speed, efficiency, and the trust of the XRPL, which has never been hacked. And looking ahead, institutions are already lined up to use the protocol. Alright, let's finish up with the rest of this. So I know that some of this might be boring, I know it's not hype, but this is so incredibly important to understand because there are so many big things going on with the XRPL. Alright, so let's dive into programmability and developer experience. So one of the big goals of the XRP Ledger is to add new features without overcomplicating or risking the network, and that's where these extensions come in. So think of these extensions like plugins on a web browser. So you don't need to rebuild the entire browser, you can just add a small verified piece of code that gives you extra functionality. And on the XRP Ledger, extensions can turn something simple like an escrow into smart escrow with custom release rules. And that way it doesn't have any of the risks associated with general purpose smart contracts. And for any developers or projects that want the full smart contract experience and require full programmability, the XRP Ledger EVM or Ethereum Virtual Machine sidechain is already live. And think of this EVM sidechain as an extra lane that runs parallel or right next to the main highway, the XRP ledger. So we have one lane where Ethereum developers can deploy their Solidity apps or applications, and they can tap into the XRP ledger's liquidity and compliance features. Now let's dive into the good stuff, ZKPs or zero-knowledge proofs. So this has to do with privacy, and obviously institutions don't want all of their transactions or most transactions out in the open. And regulators, they still need to have some degree of visibility. So that's where these ZKPs or zero-knowledge proofs come in. Alright, so let's think of an example. Imagine you're at a club and that club requires you to be over 21 years old to enter. So instead of handing them your driver's license or ID with your full name and address, you can just prove cryptographically that you are over 21 years old without revealing that other private information. So that's how ZKPs work on-chain. So with zero-knowledge proofs, banks can prove KYC compliance, knowing your customer without sharing customer details that you might want to keep private. So auditors can verify balances without seeing every single wallet. We can see that the XRP ledger has moved beyond exploration and is now prototyping ZKP integrations with R&D and compliance teams alongside partners such as Hidden Road. The first application is already in development, confidential multi-purpose tokens. And this is scheduled for Q1 in 2026, so this is coming up quick. And these tokens will support privacy-preserving collateral management, a critical requirement for institutional adoption of tokenized finance. And that enables a bunch of use cases, proving KYC compliance, or maybe even where you are in the world jurisdiction-wise, enabling auditors to verify activity while still protecting counterparties' proprietary transactions or private information, supporting proof of reserves and liabilities without disclosing sensitive wallet data, and allowing tokenized collateral to be deployed in lending or settlement workflows while keeping terms and positions confidential. So we can see how all of this comes together with zero-knowledge proofs and privacy and credentials and DIDs and permissioned gating. All of this, it's all connected. So the next step is putting all of this together and seeing this really manifest. Stablecoins, RWAs, lending, compliance, custody, you name it. And imagine a world where there's essentially a single marketplace that institutions can trust and it leverages multiple blockchains. And that very well could be our future in the world of tokenization and just digitalization as a whole. So this blog was a really big one. I had to go through this in 2 parts because I really wanted to dive into examples, analogies, and kind of break it down so it's easier to understand because there's a lot happening. Ripple, the company, says the North Star remains unchanged. The XRP ledger is a leading chain for institutional finance, simple, secure, and compliant, with lending, tokenization, permission markets, and privacy converging at the protocol layer. The foundation for the next decade of institutional blockchain finance is being built now. So I hope you guys enjoyed part 2 of this video. We went over a bunch and we're going to get back into the swing of things later this week because there's so much more to go over, including a bunch of recent news. And I've said it once and I'll say it again, be sure to go check out iTrustCapital.com and check out their premium custody accounts. And if you create an account, whether you're looking at a Roth IRA for tax-free growth in the crypto asset class or a premium custody account for the definition of institutional grade storage with a closed loop system, make sure that you're using the promo code kevincage.yt right there. That way you're guaranteed to claim your $100 funding bonus after funding an account. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to every single person for watching today's video. A big thanks to all that hit the like button, and I will catch you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash the like button and let me know your thoughts down below. You can find all links to my crypto resources, including tools for charting, trading bots, wallets, portfolio trackers, and exclusive discounts right in my link tree in the video description. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.